Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining, and welcome to another session of our Day One and Beyond series, where we take you through a variety of topics. Our today's session is the Oracle Cloud Database QuickStart. So, in this session, we will cover the different database services and tools available in Oracle Cloud and their key features. We will review database use cases and get an understanding of how to determine which service is right for you. And yeah, with that, I'm Olivia Ferda. I'm a cloud engineer on the customer enablement team. I'll be taking you through the second portion of today's session. I'm also joined by Sunil. With that, I will hand it over to Sunil to introduce himself and get us started.
Thank you, Olivia. My name is, once again, Sunil Jain, Cloud Engineer on the Customer Enablement team. And today we're going to be going through the Cloud Database QuickStart. So without further ado, let's begin. So for today's session, a quick overview starting with what will we cover today. First order of business is going to be Oracle Database Services. This is going to be a brief walkthrough on Oracle Base Database Service, Oracle Exadata Database Service, and then Oracle Autonomous Database Service. Then, in the latter half of this presentation, we'll take a look at maximum availability architecture and some ways to achieve that, with the main two tools of focus today being Oracle Active Data Guard and Oracle GoldenGate. In the last section, we will take a quick look at MySQL Heatwave for those who are familiar with development on MySQL. We'll hop into the console for a quick demonstration. So our goals for this presentation is by the end of this presentation, have an idea of what the differences and some of the advantages are between some of the different databases, specifically with how to kind of describe and differentiate the autonomous database, what some of the difference between the features with data warehousing and transaction processing are, understand the different HA configurations between active data guard and data guard, understand the different deployments in the cloud service models, and just have a basic understanding of database backup, database recovery, and some database migration patterns, specifically with Oracle GoldenGate and with MySQL. Here we have a standard slide with the Oracle Cloud ecosystem. This is a comprehensive list of all of the different buckets Oracle has offerings in. Today specifically, we're going to be focusing on tools in the Oracle Databases bucket. And here we have the Oracle database options in the cloud. We see here that we have many different offerings ranging from Oracle Database on Compute all the way up to the Oracle Autonomous Database, which are going to go on a sliding automation scale. So when we think of Oracle Database on Compute, this is a bare metal or virtual machine or bare metal instance. It's a single instance database, and it's going to have data guard on it, which is something we'll talk about a little bit more depth in one of the other slides, but it's basically a way to fail over from one database node to another. And after Oracle Database on Compute, which is a virtualized Oracle database in the cloud, we have the Oracle Base Database Service. This is a cloud native database. It's going to have VMs with block storage. There's going to be offerings for standard and enterprise editions. It's going to have a rack real application option and data guard. And then it's also for the automation, going to have auto TDE, and then the ability to have automated backups to object storage and automated patching, which can all be managed through the console or programmatically. As we continue to creep up the automation scale, we're going to see Oracle Exadata Database Service, which is going to have a lot of performance and hardware optimizations. Just a quick little tidbit is you're going to see that it has something called the flash cache, which is a memory system that is going to look at both disk and flash memory. And there's going to be machine learning to help this database learn how to use its hardware better. There's going to be auto scaling, which is a way to more dynamically use your compute nodes in the database. Your database nodes will be scaling up and scaling down based on performance, etc. Then all the way at the tail end, we have the Oracle Autonomous Database, which is going to go from co-managed to fully managed, where you're going to have auto scaling, auto tuning, and auto patching. And with the auto tuning, Oracle Autonomous Database, one of the key pieces towards this automation picture is something called SQL plan management, which is something that's going to in real time, look at all SQL statements being run on the database and, make sure that all of them are running, that there's no potentially, contaminated components, or that when you're making changes to your database, it's not running slower. So based on what level of automation you're looking for, what type of things that you need someone on your team to do versus something that you prefer to offload to the tool itself, there's different options on OCI to fit your need. So we'll take a deeper look at each of these buckets, starting with Oracle-based database service. So this we're going to have as a full-featured Oracle Database Cloud instances. This is available in Oracle Cloud infrastructure regions around the world. There's going to be two licensing options, SE2, standard database service, which is based on the SE2 license. The enterprise database service based on the EE license. There's going to be multi-level security with always-on encryption. If you've looked at any of the database security options, all of the cloud-native databases are going to come with Oracle Data Guard, which is a tool that will help you audit your database for sensitive data and give you some briefings on user activity with automated TDE, as we saw in the previous slide. There's going to be license including options or the ability to bring your own license. So if you have some licenses on premises that you'd like to bring to the cloud, you can bring them over for a very steep discount on to OCI. And so lastly, for support for 12C, 19C, 21C, and 23C, you're going to have support for all of these database versions with a small caveat on 12C. For some of the early versions of 12C, there is not CDB PDB architecture. So for your 12C support, it's going to support all versions of 12C that are in the CDB to PDB architecture model. For some last bits, you have the ability to run single node or two node rack virtual machines, two node clusters for your databases. And with your cloud automation we saw earlier, you can do automated patching and backup, disaster recovery through CloudDart. And for provisioning, there's tools such as, Ansible, such as Terraform, different infrastructure as code pieces, and the API that you can use to automate provisioning of these resources as well. So here we have another quick slide on licensing. So for license included, if you're looking to build new applications, expand functionality, basically get new resources, then you would choose license included as you're grabbing a new piece of equipment. And then for bring your own license, if you're moving existing workloads from on-premises, then you can utilize your existing on-premises and save on existing software and support. This is going to include your TDE, diagnostics pack, tuning pack, data mask and subsetting pack, and rat testing at no additional cost. So automated database lifecycle operations under the customer control. So for automation on OCI, at pretty much every single level, from provisioning, scaling, patching, continuous availability, backup and recovery, disaster recovery, and built-in security, all of this is going to be things that are automated and managed for you. Even on the most simple level of database, you have the options to be able to achieve all of this. With provisioning, you will have automated provisioning through the many infrastructure as code tools on OCI. With scaling, even though the auto scaling isn't going to be managed for you, on the Oracle-based database service, what you can do is you can set an auto scaling policy. So what that's going to do is you're going to provide a utilization metric. When that metric is reached, it's going to spin another resource up. Then, whenever the utilization goes below whatever metric you've chosen, so let's say you want to have like 80% utilization, and it goes past that, it spins up more resources. When it goes below that, you're going to specify an amount of time. So let's say it goes below 80% utilization for 5 minutes, then it will deprovision what it spun up. And that's something that you can do even on base database. Patching and backup and recovery are going to be able to be automated through the console in any level of native database. If you want continuous availability, you can choose to spin up the rack cluster. And for disaster recovery and security, you have Data Guard and um, any of the disaster recovery tools to help you with security and data masking, user activity auditing, etc. And on top of that, all of these are integrated with OCI Audit for some of the logging. So next we'll move on to Exadata. Exadata offers extreme scalability, performance, and availability for all data workloads at the lowest possible cost. So with the ideal database hardware, you're going to have, as I said earlier, scale out, optimize compute, networking, and storage. For the database-aware system software, there's going to be algorithms and machine learning built into your database that are going to vastly improve your performance for any standard operational and analytical apps for any use case, any scale. With automated management, it's going to be similar to the base database automation we saw, except this time we're going to build on top of that at the entirety of the database stack. So first bit we'll look at is deployment. Exadata runs everywhere. If you want a fully on-prem environment, you can have a physical Exadata box put into your data center. If you want to have something physical but still leverage the cloud, then you can have Cloud at Customer, where you're bringing the cloud to your data center. And then you have Exadata Cloud Infrastructure on the public cloud and Exadata on multi-cloud. So you can have it on-prem, private cloud, public cloud, or multi-cloud. It's extremely flexible in its deployment options. For the scale-out architecture, has the unique ability to scale up for any workload, including OLTP. This is going to provide application transparent and extreme scalability and availability. So we see here, it's got RDMA and then the SQL offload. So basically what's happening is it's figuring out when it should choose to prioritize its memory for, IO, and when it's going to offload complex SQL operations to another system where it's going to prioritize the fast SQL. And this prioritization is something that's really unique to Exadata. It's going to be able to add compute or storage servers as needed, and this expansion is going to happen fully online. So to compare it to the base database system, we had to make our own auto-scaling policies and manage them when we were using the base database. But since there's machine learning built into Exadata, it's going to basically be looking at your utilization patterns, and it's going to basically model out when it believes, based on your utilization, you're most likely to experience performance degradation, and it's going to optimally scale up and scale down to give you a really dynamic and pay-per-use model around your database. So for Exadata Cloud, it's the most complete database service available. It's extremely flexible, very powerful. It's going to be multi-tenant, multi-workload. So you're going to have support for, spatial, graph, JSON, GeoJSON, etc. It's going to have in-memory database, real application clusters, active data guard, which is going to be an active-active failover architecture for your database workloads. There's going to be database partitioning, so you can have isolation within the database. There are advanced compression algorithms. With the advanced compression algorithms, basically, there's a really, really neat white paper on this that will go far more into depth than what I will, but it's going to take your database rows and columns and compress them based on indexes into chunks that the database is going to be reading much more efficiently than it would just running standard SQL queries. So this also is going to help increase your performance. So this comes with the Oracle management packs for Oracle Database, Advanced Analytics, Spatial, and Graph. It's going to have the ability, once again, to offload SQL to storage, RCE Fabric, the Smart Flash Cache, which I was talking about a little bit earlier. This is what I was talking about with both disk and flash memory, and it's going to run things in parallel, but then learn as it goes on, so it can just prioritize the correct type of memory to run each individual job as fast as possible. You have hybrid columnar compression tools to help you with I/O resource management, network resource management, in-memory fault tolerance, and execution direct-to-wire protocol. Next, you also have the Oracle Autonomous Database Cloud at Customer. Primary goals and benefits. This is going to be the autonomous database on Gen 2 Exadata Cloud at Customer. So this is very similar to Exa C@C, except it's going to be built literally directly on top of this. This also has the ability for you to transition to autonomous cloud. So if you're on premises and you've decided after working on C@C that you would just prefer to be in the cloud, then it has a really easy ability to, reconnect and run and transition to autonomous cloud. For Exadata Cloud, this is going to be easy to deploy and manage. It's going to be fully managed with complete automation, eliminates a lot of your administrative tasks. It's going to have the same auto scaling that we talked about earlier. And for the workload optimizations, you have different optimizations based on data warehousing, transaction processing, and JSON. With the JSON being optimized for, SOTA collections and JSON data. On the Exadata database service, you're going to have a little bit more access with autonomous database. Because it's a fully managed service, right? The goal is for you to do a little bit less. That's the idea of full automation. So if you do have some things that your security posture or just you want to control, then Exadata database is still going to have root access and the ability to fully customize your database environments. It's going to have customer controlled automation to still help you greatly reduce your administrative burden with the infrastructure managed by Oracle. It's also going to have machine learning for auto scaling to help you with variable workloads, and it's an easy lift and shift from on-premises to cloud at any point in time. So we've kind of alluded a little bit to the autonomous database while talking with the autonomous cloud at customer, but now let's look at the full autonomous database. So for autonomous database, this is an extension built on top of the Exadata cloud infrastructure. This is an extremely easy tool to use. It is meant to be a fully automated solution to really take out a lot of the monotonous work from your day-to-day. So for provisioning, there's very easy ways to provision. There's helpers to provision this in OCI. There's an always free version of this. So if you want to just play around and test out the feature set, you can spin up, single node, it's a small node, a couple gigs, I believe 4 or 5, but you can spin it up for free, test the features, see if the automation it provides is something that you're interested in that would help your business. Then once you've kind of provisioned the database, you've got some data there, it's going to automatically optimize your data formats. It's going to have index optimization, parallelism, and plans for each workload. So when we talked about plans, this is alluding to that SQL plan management, where it's going to look at the operations on your different database objects. It's going to format them into SQL plans. And then if there's any, performance degradation, right, the plan becomes less efficient. Some components are running slower than they used to. Then what will happen is SQL plan will notify you, and if you have it on the setting where it can just retroactively, correct things, then if things are in place slower, it will just revert them to the previous version, so you can maintain that high performance. For protection, it's going to have automated backups, the ability to restore. It's going to have transparent failover within cluster to remote standbys. It's also going to have something that's called autonomous data guard, which is the ability to create a connection and a peer environment in just a couple of clicks. It's going to have the same scaling. So it's a little redundant, but there's going to be machine learning algorithms to track your utilization and give you optimal scaling. This is going to be able to patch completely online as well. So it's going to have the ability to tune and patch, diagnose. Everything is done online. So you're not going to experience performance degradation. And for security, it's going to once again apply security updates as well online. It has integration with DB Vault. So if you need to have isolation within the database, you'll have that. And then similar with both Exadata and with the base database service, all data is encrypted by default. So when you take a look at all of these different pieces, you end up with a really, really fast and efficient platform where a lot of your database management is going to go from instead of just managing, putting out fires, fixing things that are broken, you can work on expansion, efficiency, etc. And here we have the four different flavors of the autonomous database. We have data warehouse, which is work for decision support. Data warehouse queries, it's going to prioritize fast queries over large volumes of data. Transaction processing is going to be the flip side, where it's built for transactional workload. It's going to prioritize high concurrency for short running queries and transactions. And it's not going to put as big of a priority on these complex operations. Apex is built for Oracle Apex application development. Apex is a low-code app dev platform that's been built by Oracle, and you can almost think of if you're using the Oracle Apex flavor, you can think of the ADW as kind of a landing zone to really jumpstart that application development. Make sure you've got that connection from ADW to Apex, so you can get your data into the app and just start building as fast as possible. The last one is JSON. This is built really exclusively for JSON-centric application development. It's going to be developer-friendly document APIs and native JSON storage. Something I would make sure everyone remembers is if you are using the autonomous JSON, a lot of the ways this database has been optimized for JSON workloads makes it so that it is a little bit less efficient for generic workloads. So if you have specifically JSON workloads, use the JSON database. It'll increase your performance. It's great. If you have regular workloads, then don't spin up the JSON database and put non-JSON workloads on it. It is not meant for that. All three of the other ones are going to be perfect for non-JSON workloads. The JSON one really specifically is just built for JSON.
And just building off of the slide that Snell was just showing. So you'll see this in the demo when I walk you through getting started with autonomous database, but you can select the workload type depending on your use case. But one thing to note, so if you do data warehouse or transaction processing, that can run on either serverless or dedicated, but if you do Apex or JSON, that's just on serverless. And then I think Sunil mentioned this earlier, but if you're within your tenancy limits, you can maybe do always free autonomous. There are some limitations to that. There's also a fairly new option as well. It's the autonomous database for developers. And so what that is, it's a low-cost fixed shape instance. And this is more for development and testing. So that is another option when you're creating your autonomous database. And then you can kind of see in the background that there's a lot of key features like Apex, SQL worksheet. So we'll take a glance at that.
Yep. And there's something in the data ACI, which you can even play around with a lot of these in the always free version. It's called database actions. And this is going to be Oracle Spatial, Oracle Graph. It's going to be Oracle Machine Learning, which is a tool to give you Zeppelin and Jupyter notebooks in basically a wrapper where you can do your machine learning and your Python, R, and SQL coding on top of the database, which is going to help you with runtime. So there's just a lot of powerful tools to play with that even, if you're interested, you can even try out in the always free version. Just super nifty. So with the kind of wrap up, you have a really easy, convenient design with a pay-per-use consumption model with machine learning and auto scaling built in. So that way you're only going to be paying for active OCPUs. There's self-service with team isolation, quotas, and a lot of built-in best practices. It's designed for high availability. You're going to have native transparent real application clusters, always online, even for maintenance, and autonomous data guard, which is just a low code, really easy to set up way to make sure that you have disaster recovery. And then it's going to be automated and enforcing your best practices. It's got end-to-end encryption, role-based data isolation, data redaction, and with data safe, you have the ability to audit and monitor your different users. And for this user and config risk assessment, when you're using data safe, this is not just for Autonomous, this is for any database. If you have data that it detects as, potentially secure data. So it's going to look for like, phone numbers, SSNs, data formats that it believes to be critical or very important. And it's going to look at what users interact with that data. So it will let you also know which of your users are high risk users. And then it'll be like, hey, this user is accessing a database object with people's SSNs and he hasn't changed his password in 3 years. It's a pretty simple password. It's like weak, and he doesn't have two-factor authentication. So you might be like, okay, it's a pretty high-risk account. We should make sure that this account is tightened up a little bit. Stuff like that. And so just to reiterate, the autonomous database dedicated is available on Exadata in public cloud and Exadata Cloud at Customer. You're going to have tons of flexibility with how you design it. There's going to be custom policies for database isolation to meet your performance and regulatory compliance, custom policies for software versioning, maintenance life service, etc. And with the serverless, if you're basically renting out the entire physical box and you're not using a shared box, so if you're on dedicated instead, then you'll even have a little bit more flexibility in terms of when you want to patch your environment, etc. And so here, for the last little bit, we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into Oracle Apex. For Apex, we see got a handful different features. You got the app builder, SQL workshop, team development for collaboration, and app gallery. This is a lot of templates on applications that Oracle's built out. So you can kind of see how we've laid out our different objects for a web application. And you can feed in your data, different parameters on your end, different inputs into a template of something that we've done in the past that we think looks good. You have the RESTful services, integrate with REST API, object browser, look at all your database objects, etc., your web application objects, and just kind of click and drag them to place when you're building out your app. And you've got data loading and monitoring for once everything's set up. So the big advantage of Oracle Apex is you don't need to have an experienced software engineer to potentially build a really useful web application. You're going to be able to make data-centric apps to visualize and manage relational JSON and spatial data. Some of the templates for spatial are really, really impressive. You can do a lot of cool stuff with them. And there's a lot of support for this tool. It's easy to learn without being an expert in a variety of technologies. And you're basically going to be able to develop an app that is really powerful without coding. So with that, that's going to wrap up the first half of the presentation. We're going to now talk about maximum availability architecture, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Olivia.
So here we're mainly going to be focusing on active data guard and GoldenGate, so kind of more around GoldenGate for replicating and integrating your data. All right, so a key feature of Oracle Database Services and Oracle Cloud are the best practices that are built in. So with this, it automatically deploys Oracle RAC to provide a scalable and highly available database platform. So Oracle RAC protects from any unplanned failures by spreading work across multiple database instances. In addition, it eliminates downtime for maintenance activities by automatically migrating work off the servers about to undergo maintenance to others that remain online. And so there's a few mentioned earlier, MMA technologies. So once again, continuous availability, you have data protection. We're mainly going to be focusing on this piece right here around active data guard and GoldenGate. So backups and replication with data guard can be easily set up for disaster recovery using the control plane. And then once again, you also have GoldenGate for replicating and integrating your data. Right, so diving into disaster recovery with your active data guard. So data guard is a key database feature that provides real-time disaster protection. So should you lose your primary database or data center, you can fail your workload over to a standby site maintained automatically by data guard. So you can choose between synchronous or asynchronous transport of data to the disaster recovery or DR site. So this would optimize for performance or zero data loss. And then Data Guard also provides continuous data corruption prevention. And Active Data Guard enables you to utilize active database copies for upgrades and migrations, as well as offloading queries, reporting, and backups to remote standby. And setting up Data Guard is a critical component of any maximum availability architecture solution. And one thing to note is that the Exadata database service makes it simple to enable with a single API call or click of the mouse in the UI using cloud automation. And likewise, the automation supports critical use cases like switching your primary database to your disaster recovery or DR site, switching back, and reinstating your primary database after a failover. And then another tool under MAA or maximum availability architecture is GoldenGate. So enterprise data is typically distributed across enterprise and heterogeneous databases. So in order to get data between different data sources, this is where you can use GoldenGate. And OCI GoldenGate is a fully managed cloud native service that moves data in real time at scale. So OCI GoldenGate processes data as it moves from one or more data management systems to target databases. So you can also design, run, orchestrate, and monitor data replication tasks without having to allocate or manage any compute environments. So really, once again, GoldenGate is Oracle's solution to replicate and integrate data. So it effectively gives you the means to move data from one system to another in real time. And these are just some of the different combinations of supported data platforms. And I think this list should also be online if you want to take a closer look. So you can see all the different apps, different databases, NoSQL, and Internet of Things or IoT, cloud, big data, all of that. And once again, these are just further expanding on that list. So your real-time sources and targets, real-time targets, any bulk data transform sources or targets. And these are just some of the use cases. So if you want to do on-prem to cloud, multi-region, SaaS or software as a service, to OCI, multi-cloud, you have several different options here. Another one is around initial load. And initial load is the process of extracting data records from source database and loading those records onto a target database. So it's just a data migration process that is performed only once, and GoldenGate would allow you to perform initial load data migrations without taking your systems offline. So you have several different use cases right here. Another tool that I want to cover before I hop into the console is MySQL. So MySQL is an open source relational database management system. So really, it just makes it easy to create a high availability database system. So for instance, a 3-node database system using MySQL group replication is going to automate failover with the recovery time of minutes and zero data loss. And one thing to note when you're creating your MySQL database system, it will give you the option between, I think, dev and prod, and depending on the option that you choose. So for more dev or testing, it'll recommend standalone. So with this, you would have a single instance MySQL database system. But if you did like production, it's going to recommend high availability. So where you get that automatic failover and zero data loss. So just kind of one thing to note, you can change those settings, but it'll give you some recommendations depending on that environment. And yeah, this just kind of builds off of the high availability mentioned in the previous slide. So the MySQL database takes full advantage of OCI's multiple availability domain and fault domain architecture to give you that high availability. And these multi-availability domain or AD regions provide multiple data centers located within a region. And these availability domains are isolated from each other and are fault tolerant. So once again, you essentially get automatic failover with an RTO or recovery time objective of minutes and zero data loss. And then on top of that, you have MySQL Heatwave, and this combines transactions, real-time analytics across data warehouse and data lake and machine learning into one MySQL database. So you can run real-time analytics on data stored in MySQL, so you don't need a separate analytics database nor complex ETL processes, so you can get faster insights and avoid security risk of data movement between your data stores. And also another thing with MySQL Heatwave, you also get in database machine learning, so you don't need to move data once again to a separate machine learning service. And you can easily and securely apply machine learning training, um, an explanation to your data in Heatwave. So whether it's coming from the database or the object store. So those are some of the key features. And yeah, just to recap, it provides a single solution for running hybrid OLTP or online transaction processing and OLAP online analytical processing workloads. So it enables you to run both those workloads in MySQL without the need to ETL or extract, download, and load data to a separate database for analytic processing. And those changes made by MySQL transactions are going to be replicated in real time to the Heatwave cluster and become immediately available for analytic queries, giving you that real-time analytics. And once again, since data isn't transferred between databases, the risks that it could be compromised is eliminated. Okay, so just a few things to remember before I hop into the console for an autonomous database demo is there's different types of database options as we covered today, Exadata, Oracle-based database, autonomous, all of that. That will help you solve your different use cases. And then you can also leverage some MAA or maximum availability architecture tools such as GoldenGate for replicating and integrating your data or more data guard for disaster recovery. All right, so I pulled up the console right here. And in the menu, most of the database services that we cover today are going to be an Oracle database. This is where autonomous is. You have your base database service, you have Exadata, and this is more around database security. So data safe, you have your GoldenGate right here. And then under databases right here, so this is your Heatwave MySQL. You also have Postgres, all of this right here. But we're going to be focusing on the autonomous database, so I'm going to click into that. And to get started with your autonomous database, so as with any resource that you're creating in OCI, you would specify in which compartment that resource will reside in. You would give your database a name. And this just goes back to the slides that Sunil was showing earlier, where you'd specify your workload type. So you have your data warehouse or you have transaction processing. And with these two, you can choose whether you want it to run on serverless or if you want it to run on dedicated Exadata. If you do JSON or Apex, it's only available on serverless, so just one thing to keep in mind. But that's where you specify this information. And let's just say you kind of want to get a feel for how autonomous works. You can maybe do always free. You're limited in terms of some features. I don't think you can enable stuff like data guard for always free, but you can still kind of get an idea of the different tools available. And one thing to note, so in this case, our account has reached the maximum limit for always free, so just something to keep in mind. And then as I mentioned earlier, you have this low-cost developer option for more development testing. And you have this fixed compute and storage model right here. So you can do one of those options if you want, or you can just set it up as is right here. And you can specify the version, so 19C, or you can do 23AI. And then you have your compute and your storage auto scaling. So basically, it can expand up to 3 times the specified eCPU or 3 times the reserved storage that you define right here. So this is more around backups, and we'll see a little bit more of this later. But you have your automatic backups, and you can set the max retention period for that to be 60 days, or you can decrease that. You can also create your own long-term backup, and I think it's between 3 months up to 10 years, and you can set up the schedule for that. So I think it's weekly, monthly, and annually. So you can also do that as well. This is just your admin credentials. So in order to have access to some tools by default, such as database actions or just, all the admin stuff, you can set your password right here. And then you can change that later if needed. And then it has to be admin for your username. So you cannot change that. Another thing that you can specify is your network access. So if you want secure access from everywhere, maybe restrict access to specific IP addresses and VCNs, or if you want to restrict access to a private endpoint within an OCI virtual cloud network or VCN, you can. And this is something that you can modify later on if you want to provide any contacts for any operational notifications and announcements. You can go ahead and do so here. So you can give a few emails. But that's pretty much it to getting started with your autonomous database. So specifying some of the features here. So if you want to do always free developer or just, as is, your deployment type and your workload type. But yeah, that's how you get started. So we already have an autonomous database right here. It's an always free one. So I'm going to click into that. And once you have your instance, you can see the name, workload type, the version. So we're 19C. If you're doing always free, you can upgrade to paid. And I think right now you can only do that for 19C. I'm not sure if you can still do that for 23AI. So just something to keep in mind. But it should give you a note about that if so. And then you also have your Apex instance. So if you're interested in low code application development, this is where you can access that instance. More around disaster recovery. This is your backup information. So our automatic backup retention period is 60 days, but you can set it to be less than that. Once again, you also have your long-term backup, and you can do this between 3 months up to 10 years, and you can set up the schedule for that. Networking, you have your maintenance right here, and you can see that when the next maintenance window is, you can view the history for that. You can manage the customer contacts. If you want to enable data safe, you can see encryption. So it's an Oracle managed key. And then down here, you have some metrics. So you can specify the start and end time for this. So right now it's just looking at the last hour metrics. You can do um, up to last 90 days, or you can even do the next 90 days. So what it predicts. So you can specify that here. So you can see things like CPU utilization, storage utilization, queued statements. Also down here is your backup information. So you can see that this is an automatic backup right here. So it'll give you the type, the timestamp, if it's active, the retention period for that, the version, all this right here, and what that expiration date is. And you can restore and recover your database to any point in time in this retention period. So if you go right here, you can restore right here. You can also create a clone if you want. So you have some of these options here. All right, so going back to the top, there are some key actions right here. So if you need to stop your autonomous database, restart, restore, if you want to create a clone, or if you need to manage the admin password, you can, licensing, if you need to manage your encryption key, rename your database, if you're doing ice free, upgrading instance to paid, or if you want to terminate, you have all of those details there. Um, you also have your database connection right here. So if you want to connect to um, Oracle Analytics Cloud or SQL Developer, something like that, you would need to download your wallet. Or just for security or compliance reasons, you might want to rotate your wallet. And you have two different wallet types. So Oracle is going to recommend that you use the more database specific wallet with this instance wallet right here. You also have your regional wallet, and that should be used more for admin purposes that require potential access to all autonomous databases within a region. So that's where you can download your wallet information. So that is information right there. You also have your database actions, and you can do some quick selects right here. So the SQL Developer Web, database users. This is pretty important for granting permissions or different roles to your users. Data load, and then if you click View All Database Actions, it'll take you to this page right here. And if you want to get started, one great way of doing so is clicking this little icon right here, and it'll take you through kind of a tour to get more familiar with SQL Developer. So really it's just a web interface for working with your database. So you can run queries, create tables, generate schema diagrams, and more. And if you have a previous worksheet, which we do, I'm just going to open this. Once again, you can run it and see the output right here. So you can see your query result, script output. So that's SQL Developer Web. And one thing just real quick, this is the Oracle Database Actions homepage. So it's where you can access SQL Developer Web or some of these different tools. And one thing I want to note about this is that it runs in Oracle REST Data Services, and access is going to be provided through schema-based authentication. So in order to use database actions, you have to be signed in as a database user whose schema is enabled for database actions. And by default, the admin user is enabled to access database actions. So I just want to point that out. But this is where you would access a lot of the different key tools, but you can also do it from here. So database users is pretty important. So if you launch it from here, it'll take you to this page, and this is where you can create a user. So you would specify username, password, if you want to enable or disable graph for this user, web access, or Oracle machine learning. And then where you grant the different permissions or roles is on this page right here. And I think there's documentation that outlines maybe some of the different roles you might need for certain things. So you can see right here is where you can grant those different roles to that user. So those are your database users and how you manage that. And then just going back to database actions right here, if there's anything that you're working with fairly often, you can go ahead and pin that resource right here. And then this is where all the different development tools like SQL Developer Web are going to be located, JSON, Oracle Machine Learning. You also have Apex right here. So once again, the low code application development. There's also Data Studio for loading your data, getting data insights, data transforms, analysis, all of that. And the nice thing about each of these different tabs is it provides documentation. This is admin, so we saw database users, so it's pretty crucial for granting those permissions to your different users and the different roles. You also have Apex workspaces for managing the workspaces for your different applications and all of that. And then you have your client credentials or your wallet information. There's an area for downloads. There is something for monitoring, so there's performance hub right here. So if you click into that, you can get some more information. So I'm just going to click actually the database dashboard so you can see right now what the storage allocated is, the storage used. You can see CPU utilization, all of that. So monitor right now, this is just looking at real time. You can also monitor a time period if you want. So you can specify that right here. And then lastly, because I know we're coming up on time, and I know that there's a lot of different features as part of Autonomous. So one thing that I do want to highlight is LiveLabs. It's one of my favorite tools, and it's a great way of getting more hands-on experience with the different tools in OCI. So you don't need to be signed in or anything to access this page. And if I click View All Workshops right here, this will list all the different labs that we have available. And then if you just want to focus on one of the tools that we covered today, like Autonomous database. So this will list all of the different Autonomous database labs. So if you just want to focus on loading and analyzing your data, there's even a 15-minute quick start, monitoring, machine learning, Data Studio, and you can do this for other tools such as GoldenGate and all of that. But I'm just going to click into one of these labs just to show you real quick what that looks like. So yeah, with each of these labs, it will give you time estimates, an outline of what it will cover, any prereqs you may need, a video background, all of that. And depending on the workshop that you want to run, it's going to vary. So some might just give you the option to run on your own tenancy. Some might also give you the option to run on a LiveLabs sandbox where you can run an Oracle-owned tenancy for free. So you just specify when you want to start the lab, and you can also extend the lab time as well. Even if a lab just has run on your own tenancy, you can still see the lab instructions to get an idea of how something works. So let's just say you want to know more about loading data from local files. It'll give you the information to either follow along or once again, kind of see how it works. It's pretty good about providing the images and everything. But yeah, I just want to point this out because there's a lot of different features as part of Autonomous, or there's a lot of different tools out there. And also just want to note, this is our webinar series, but we also do have hands-on and some of it covers some of the different topics in OCI. So I highly recommend that you explore that as well.
Thank you very much.